When pro wrestling's first national television boom ended in the late 1950s, the superstars that it had created began returning to their homes and buying or taking control of the local promotions in what was the big bang of the modern territory system. One of the first was Vern Gagne, and the promotion he formed, the AWA, would be bigger and last longer than almost all of them. Gagne, as NCAA wrestling champion at Minnesota in '48 and '49, was already a local sports star when he made his pro debut for Minneapolis promoter Tony Stecker in 1949. It was a main event win against top heel Abe King Kong Cashy. And just a year later, Gagne won the NWA World Junior Heavyweight title. By 1951, he went to a one-hour draw with Lou Thesz for the NWA World Heavyweight title. The Dumont Network wrestling show from Chicago made Gagne a household name, and promoter Fred Kohler made him the U.S. champion, the only other traveling champion besides Thesz, getting 10% of the gate and often outdrawing the NWA King. The TV exposure also made Gagne one of the first wrestlers to do commercials and sell merchandise. Vern Gagne became one of the 5 highest paid pro athletes in the country, the other 4 being the world boxing champion and 3 other wrestlers. But his term as champion, rivaling that of the NWA's, saw him never considered for that title. And by 1960, overlooked for title shots, Gagne legitimized a claim on the World's Championship, formed the American Wrestling Association, and established what only 2 other companies were able to build over the next 30 years, a credible, widely recognized World's Championship. After a 30-plus year career, Gagne was still so popular in the Twin Cities that his 1981 retirement match against Nick Bockwinkel drew 17,000 fans. His '83 comeback drew 19,000, with 5,000 more watching on closed-circuit television. Sports Illustrated named him the 24th best athlete ever to come from Minnesota. The story of Vern Gagne is the story of the AWA, and this is that story. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Back to the Territories here from Kayfabe Commentaries. I'm Jim Cornette, and once again, the DeLorean is functioning, and we have taken it back to another great wrestling territory. And joining us to talk about the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, is probably the closest living guy to the entire run of the company, the son of the founder, Vern Gagne, Mr. Greg Gagne. Greg, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you.
Our paths never really crossed in wrestling, and I've always wanted to work with you.
We were ships passing in the night a couple of times.
And now that I'm here, I'm done.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll do a tap dance now. No, the folks heard in the open that the AWA was one of the longest lasting, one of the largest geographically single territory in the country. But you were lucky enough to be born early enough to see your father as not the promoter, but the wrestling star, because he was one of the biggest stars of the 50s. What's the first memory you've got of seeing Vern wrestle?
Oh my God, I was trying to think of that last few days. You know, Vern just passed away recently, and I was trying to think of that, and I remember he graduated in '49 from college. I was born in '48. 1950, after his match with King Kong Cashy, they told him he was too small to wrestle in the Minneapolis area. So they sent him to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we lived in a trailer, my mother, my father, and I. And we traveled around that Tulsa thing, and he won the NWA Light Heavyweight Championship. I don't remember him wrestling so much at that time, but I remember we lived in this trailer, and he'd come home at night after his matches, and I was about 2 years old. He'd put me on his shoulders, and we could see this drive-in theater way across in the distance, and we'd sit there, couldn't hear it, we'd watch it.
But you watch it, yeah.
And then I was thinking, well, when was the first time I saw him wrestle? Probably on TV, you know, in the 50s, in the early 50s.
Chicago, the Dumont Network, Vern was the biggest star.
A lot of times you'd be able to see him, or sometimes they didn't show all the matches, so you wouldn't get to see him. But I remember him taking the first match he took me to was the old Minneapolis Auditorium. And Kinji Shibuya and Mitsu Arakawa wrestled the Kamelkoff brothers, 2 heel teams that beat the living tar out of each other.
Yeah.
There was blood everywhere. And I was about 6 or 7 years old, And he took me down past the locker room after the matches, and I look in here and I see Shibuya and Arakawa, and they're getting stitched up, and there's blood everywhere. And walk past the next room over here is the Kamelkov brothers. They're being stitched up. And I turned to him and I said, Dad, I know one thing for sure. I never want to be a wrestler. But later
Things
on,
happen to change your mind.
Yeah, things changed.
So explain, it's not easy it's easy to call yourself a world champion in wrestling, but it's not easy to establish a credible world's title.
And he did. And he was fantastic. He'd carry the load in the ring. And Jesse would only come in when he was on top because he couldn't give you a good comeback. He couldn't make you look good.
Yeah, I remember when he came down to work with Lawler, and that's basically he'd beat Lawler up for 15 minutes and Lawler would make the comeback because that was Lawler's MO to get the heel over.
Yeah.
When he started firing the punches, Jesse kind of jumped up and turned around and did a little hokey pokey thing because he couldn't really bump or anything.
But Jesse thought he was God's gift to the wrestling world and thought he should be the world champion over Hogan.
Well, at least he got elected governor, so maybe he had the last laugh. Yeah,
that's all bullshit.
Wrestlers and politics should be easy because you just have to cut the promo.
You'd be a good one.
Thank you.
You've
if
got
nominated,
you've
I
got
will
that
not
knack.
run.
You've
If
got
elected,
that
I will
knack.
not serve. Let me